I think two things. One is having the confidence that they've got things in place so that they can rely on the figures they're looking at, whether you're doing it yourself or having one of your team do it or outsourcing it.
Yeah.
Having that in place. And the second thing is growing in your knowledge of those financial figures.
And joining me on the line today, I've got Ed Johnson from Exdia. Is that how we pronounce it, Ed?
Yeah, you got it right. Thanks, David.
Yeah. Exdia. Welcome to the call.
Thanks, David. Yeah, really good to be here. Thank you.
Maybe tell us a little bit about Exdia and what you actually do.
Yeah, thanks, David. We're business owners. So generally small business owners, from a small sole trader right up to where businesses are starting to employ, 5 or 10 people or more. And we really want to free up the business owner in the areas of bookkeeping and payroll. So they've got great figures and great processes in place to help them run their business.
Yeah, right. And, it's probably the bane of most people's existence, getting their books done and getting their payroll done and just crunching the numbers. Obviously, in the current economy, it's probably becoming more important than ever to really use those numbers to drive decisions in the business. Can you give me a bit of a sort of perspective from your point of view of what you think people in business should be doing right now?
Yeah, I think if we think of the flow of financial information through the business and what do business owners need at the end of that flow, I guess the current climate has highlighted we really want to know what's happening in our businesses. We want to know figures, whether it's just for our own operations and future or for specific things that we need for applying for grants like JobKeeper, JobSaver, etc., micro business grants. So if we work backwards from there, we want those figures, we want that information, we want to make good decisions. What needs to be in place further up the chain or further upstream for those figures to occur. So we want good reports. Yeah. What gives us good reports? Good data. What gives us good data? Good processes and operations in bookkeeping and payroll. So and then the next question for business owners is, well, who's going to do this? If you're the business owner here focusing on growth and decisions and compliance and so forth, do you then want to spend your time here in the data section to get that information in down here? And for many small business owners, yes, we have to do that. For others, if there's a bit of opportunity to free up time here and focus more on the growth and decisions, that can be a really strategic place for business owners to make a change.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of things you touched on there, and I suppose the first one is this whole tenet of the numbers don't lie in business. And really often people think they're busy and they call their business busyness, right? Yeah. And the reality is they're not making money. The numbers tell us all this, but sometimes we don't have current information from the numbers. And, when we coach people in business, we talk about two kinds of numbers. We talk about lagging indicators, which are usually dollar driven. And then we talk about leading indicators, which are activity driven.
Yeah.
And yes, you need to understand the financials 100% because it tells you what happened. Okay. But you also need to know what's happening right now. So the leading indicators are usually things like number of leads that come in from the marketing, or number of sales calls, those sorts of things. You sort of touched on another thing there, which was the importance of it's not the getting of the numbers that's important, it's the using the numbers to make a better decision. Can you elaborate on that?
But where a lot of us can struggle is understanding the balance sheet and how that can help the business. And that's, I guess, when you talked about lagging and leading, I guess the balance sheet can be a helpful report to look to the future. So it really gives the business a picture of financial position. How much funds are we actually building up over the years that we've been in business? How much funds have we got tied up in liabilities, and how much funds are available that we can start making decisions about investing in our growth, right, and planning that out in the future. So getting a rudimentary understanding of those two reports and how they actually relate to your own business can be really helpful. And the more you look at them, the more you become familiar with them, and your eye just goes to the things that are sort of key turners in your own business. Yeah.
And just so we're clear, it sounds to me like the profit and loss is a bit like the litres per 100 kilometres on your car, right? It's just a snapshot in time of how hard you're hitting the accelerator, whereas the balance sheet is like the history of the business summarized on a single page. So it's where you stand right now as an organization. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. So I think of profit and loss is really over a period of time, shows you what's happened over that period.
Yeah.
The balance sheet's at a point in time. So it says, okay, after all that's happened, what is that now? What's the result of that now in the financial position of our business at that point in time? Yeah, so it's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's the confusion. People are always looking at the P&L. How did we go last month? How did we go last month? We're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. And it's like, you're going to be up and down. That's how business is, right? But in the end, the net result of all of that, I think there's only one number that transfers between the profit and loss and the balance sheet, isn't it? And it's the bottom line number.
Yeah, that's right.
Profit, it adds to the bank account. If you made a loss, it adds to the loss.
Yeah, that's right. So the key numbers that retained earnings at the bottom, which is your profit. There's a few other numbers that go across, like particularly if you've got stock in your business, you'll have assets and liabilities going up and down with stock and so forth. But I think for most of us, if we start with that key profit number and how that's building up or shrinking over time, that's a really good helpful indicator for future planning.
So let me ask you, what's the consequence? Because obviously with a lot of people, they go, yeah, that's all important, but I just get my accountant to do that. And I don't really know the numbers, because I know when I ask people, they can tell me their revenue most times, not always. But when you ask profitability questions, they get a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
When you ask equity questions or anything about what's going on the balance sheet, they've got no real knowledge of that. What's the consequence of not having that information?
Look, sometimes it may be zero consequence. If you've got a business that just is a bit of a cash cow and it's just going to run anyway and you're going to make money, that's fine. But the consequence is you might miss indicators that things are starting to go wrong, or you might also miss opportunities. So there might be you might have $20,000 excess that you could invest in marketing that would really help your business, but not knowing that you can spend that money could hold you back from growing.
Yeah, right. So really, like what you've just sort of described is, if I know what's actually in the bank, I can make a better, more leveraged decision on what I do with the money that I have, or the lack of money.
Yeah. And just that phrase in the bank can be, so the bank account is one indicator.
Yeah.
But knowing how much of that bank balance is tied up with liabilities is crucial. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the symptoms I've seen a lot is where people get to the end of the quarter and they go, oh, Bass, every quarter it's the same thing. I've got to come up with 20 grand or 50 grand. And you go, no, well, actually, you knew how much it was going to be at the start of the month, at the start of the quarter. It's just you didn't update it. So I think you're right. Using the bank balance is dangerous. Having these facts and figures are giving you a truer indication of whether the business is moving in the right direction or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So look, if you were to summarize in one or two sentences, what are the key elements of the financials, or what is the most important thing that a business owner should be doing or looking for in that area?
I think two things. One is having the confidence that they've got things in place so that they can rely on the figures they're looking at, whether you're doing it yourself or having one of your team do it or outsourcing it.
Yeah.
Having that in place. And the second thing is growing in your knowledge of those financial figures. So just start with the profit and loss. That's the easiest to understand. Then the balance sheet, and then maybe look at some cash flow projections and just tailor that to your own business. You don't need to know everything, but just enough to understand what's working for your business. Yeah.
And I suppose, when people talk about, bookkeeping, I do it myself. I cringe. Because of all the activities within a business, probably the easiest one to outsource would be the bookkeeping, because I can find a bookkeeper to do 1 or 2 hours a week if I have to.
Yes.
That's normal, right? Whereas outsourcing other activities in the business requires a bit more of a risk, like employing people as administrative people or as PAs or even operations. Whereas the bookkeeping is a really easy thing to outsource, as long as I'm getting the right information back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Look, Ed, I appreciate your input today. It's been really interesting just to get that distinction between the profit and loss and the balance sheet. And I suppose the importance of either knowing those numbers or learning how to use those numbers to drive the growth of the business. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, great. Thank you too, David. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.